talking with Jeff Goodwin. Please tell us about your career, your 44-year career as a special effects artist.
I've been very fortunate. I joke that I've had a good ride, that I've really worked with amazing people all over the world and been a part of some films that still stand the test of time and people still love. So I feel fortunate about that. And I've just always loved what I do. I've always been a movie geek and just love movies. And so a kid from the South, didn't think he had a chance of ever getting into this business, and I finally did, and it's been wonderful. And I love every minute of it. And I'm just happy that some of the films, like I said, people still love, and the love I get from people sometimes from that is kind of overwhelming and amazing. So it's been good.
Talk about that film that you said that really got you into it.
Well, the film that I saw as a child, I mean, some of my first memories actually were movies. My parents were really young, and they would just throw me in the back of the car. We'd go to the drive-in all the time in the early 60s, and I just fell in love with movies. But when my dad took me to see the original Planet of the Apes, when it came out in the theaters in 1968, that was it. And when I saw that, I'm like, I was firmly bitten by the bug, as they say, and I knew from that point on, that was my path, that I wanted to do makeup and make effects for movies, and that was it.
Talk about.
Thank you, Dad.
So you've mentioned films like Blue Velvet that you really feel that it was close to you and were iconic films that you've worked on. Talk about that.
Well, like I said, I've been doing this now for 44 years, and without doubt, it takes me no time when somebody asks me what my favorite project is, it's Blue Velvet. It was a great experience all the way around. Working with Lynch was just a wonderful experience because he's an artist, and when I say this to people in the industry, sometimes they just can't believe it, because he lets you do your job, which is so rare in this business. And he gave me total control and trust in what we were doing, and it was just a wonderful experience. And even though that film is maybe not everybody's cup of tea, it's a film that it's my favorite film I've ever done, and still, to me, I think also holds up. I think it still packs a punch after all these years.
What was it about doing the special effects for that? What some of the process and some of the things that really.
Well, as a young makeup artist, because that was fairly early on in my career, I'd been doing films for I guess 5 years prior to me doing Blue Velvet. But I worked with a producer, which was the last of the kind of movie moguls, Dino De Laurentiis. And Dino and I was too young when it was going on that I didn't understand what he was doing, but Dino was grooming me, and he gave me a career basically. And I didn't understand that until I was much later, and I was able to actually thank Dino prior to him passing away, luckily, and thanked him for what he did for me, and the fact that I did understand now what he did for me. But that film, you got to remember, we shot Blue Velvet in 1985. It came out in 1986, and there had been nothing like that film prior to that. If it weren't for David Lynch's Blue Velvet, there would be no Quentin Tarantino's and all these other directors that have followed afterwards. And also, as far as makeup, it truly had everything. It had, straight corrective beauty makeup, and it had character makeup, it had prosthetic special effects makeup. It covered the gamut, and it was like a beautiful showcase, really, for what can be done. And I was very lucky, and it was just a great experience. And like I said, it opened doors for me then, and still does to this day.
Talk about the process where you're sitting with the actor, working, putting all that makeup, and
that's what I enjoy most. My process that I enjoy the most is actually getting a script and then reading it and breaking it down in my head and coming up with what I think the characters should be, and then talking with the director to get his take on it, and then working together with the director to be able to get ultimately working for a director and get the images out of his head to put onto a screen, basically, And so that's the process I enjoy. And then once the director and I are in tune to what we want to do with the characters, then working with the actors to do the same thing. And then when you have an actor that's really, getting into it, and especially if you have to actually transform someone and change their look, and when you got an actor that really gets into it, and they're in your chair, and the mirror is my eyes, because the mirror mimics the camera. The eyes don't see the same way the camera does. So that's why we always make people up in front of a mirror, and I'm not really looking at them most of the time. I'm looking at the mirror doing it, because that's how the camera sees. So when you have somebody in your chair and you can see in their eyes them becoming this character, that's when you get goosebumps, and that's when the magic happens, and that's the part I love.
Talk about your long career in working in the horror genre. What you really enjoy about that?
One of the fun things is actually the end process when you go to the theater and watch people react to it. That's actually rewarding and fun. But we've actually had incidents shooting the stuff on set where the crew reacts, so that's kind of fun too sometimes. Like did the reboot of Scream in 2022. It came out in 2022. Technically Scream 5, but they call it Scream because it's a reboot. But there's a particular scene in that which was not in the original script, which I wrote and came up with as far as Wes's death, the one with the knife in the neck. And when we were shooting that scene, that was actually shot on a real location. And Video Village, which is where the directors, watch what's going on, was in a tent outside in the front yard. And all the other cast members showed up that day to watch Wes get, because they knew what was happening. So they all showed up. And so as we were inside shooting the scene, when it happened, you could hear everybody at Video Village go, ah, reacting. And so inside we had looked at it and like, well, I guess we did that right.
That is awesome. Talk about, because you're more than freelancer. You actually have your own production company, Bearded Skull. Can you talk about
Bearded Skulls is a makeup effects company, or makeup lab where we create. And Bearded Skulls is fairly new. I used to have one called Transformations first that I founded in the mid '90s, and then I moved and took that to Italy. And then I moved back to the States, I guess around 2012, I guess it was, when I finally made the move back to the States. And then rejoined with my old partners here, and we formed the Bearded Skulls. So it's a group of us, and it's fun. And I'm kind of pulling back now from the effects world, but they're still going with that. And I'm trying to change lanes to start maybe directing and producing things.
Excellent. What advice would you give to anyone trying to get into the business of special effects?
Just do it. You learn by doing, and practice. And if you wanted to do the makeup and makeup effects, I suggest that even when you're playing with it, photograph everything, because again, like I said, the camera sees things different than the eye does. And so by photographing the stuff and then looking at it, you will see how it really looks. And sometimes you might do something and you think, well, that doesn't look right, I don't like that. And then you see the photographs and it looks completely different. So photograph your work always, because that's a good way to learn. And I also recommend theater, live theater, because again, especially if you're just starting out, because that teaches you how to work as a team and with people, and is a great training ground for all things in this business. I think that's a great training ground, and you can't go wrong with it.
And how can people follow you and connect with you?
I'm on Instagram as Jeff Goodwin Makeup, and I always answer people when they reach out to me. I have no problem doing that. So follow me on Instagram. If you have a question, reach out to me and I'll get back with you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.